for those who don't know, I happen to have the privilege of being married to the author, and I self-advocated my way into getting this job. So, when Shailvi started the book writing process last January, firstly, I didn't expect how much work goes into writing a book, and I got to see that firsthand. But I also didn't think we'd be here this quickly either, when I realized how much work goes into this. So, just super proud of Shailvi and all the work she's done in the last year and a half or so. And I'm excited for this event and that you all could join us today. We'll be learning a lot more about the book, about Shailvi, and also about self-advocacy in general. So I'm looking forward to it. So a couple of logistics before we jump in and start the program for today. We're going to be doing, so just so you all know, we're going to be doing a fireside chat for the first 40 odd minutes. And we have an exciting set of questions lined up, I believe, for that. We are then going to open up the floor for some audience Q&A. If you want to submit questions, you can just scan the QR code and add to those questions. And I'll be sort of moderating that and asking a couple of questions from that list as well. So please do that during the fireside chat or whenever. And then for the last 30 odd minutes, we'll be doing some fun activities, getting some pictures taken. You can buy the book, you can get a signed copy, all of those things. If you haven't already got some drinks or food, they're outside. Please feel free to go and get some during the fireside chat as well. Just make sure to please be quiet as you do that. Restrooms are located right outside on the left side. Also, please feel free to go as you need to. You can buy the book right at the table there for a special book launch rate. And you can also buy it on Amazon if you would like, but you do have a special rate today. And Shailvi will be book signing starting, post fireside chat and audience Q&A. All right, last piece of logistics here. We do have some friends who volunteered to take some photos and videos of the event. But if you feel encouraged and compelled to also take some photos, please do so. And if you do, please feel free to tag Shailvi. She is very active on LinkedIn and Twitter, but especially LinkedIn. And do tag hashtag self-advocacy so that more people find out about what this is all about. Cool. All right. So our first item on today's agenda is the fireside chat. Before I start, I'd like to take a minute to just introduce the two people who are going to be on stage here. All right. Besides being my wife and best friend, Shailvi is a technology leader and an international keynote speaker. She's the former head of data and analytics at Strava and Komodo Health. Every year, Shailvi speaks at 25 plus global conferences and Fortune 500 corporate events on self-advocacy and data. Her 16-year career has included companies such as Salesforce, Fitbit, and a startup she co-founded. Shailvi's self-advocacy expertise comes from being a practitioner at startups and large companies across 3 continents. Shailvi grew up in India and studied engineering at Illinois Tech Chicago, which also happens to be where we met. All right, so I want to also introduce Shivam, who is a partner at McKinsey and serves one of the world's largest software companies and several fast-growth SaaS startups. As leader in McKinsey's software product management and development service line, Shivam has shared his deep expertise on product management, engineering, and platform with numerous leading organizations. Shivam is also a dear friend for both Shailvi and I from college, and has been a big part of our lives for the last 2 decades. He's also a big proponent of equity in the workplace and equipping individuals with tools to advance their careers. We couldn't think of a better person to lead this fireside chat. All right, with that, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Shailvi and Shivam on stage.
All right, let's get started. Firstly, Shailvi, it's such an honor, to be honest, to be interviewing you. Of course, I've had a chance to know you for 20 years. You're one of the most inspirational leaders in tech that I know. But at a personal level, I have to thank you for writing this book. I found it very powerful for my own life. You put a really positive and actionable framework on something that, often I struggle with and have struggled with also, how we perceive by others. So thank you so much. So as Govind mentioned, we'll take about 45 minutes, go through a few questions. We'll cover both your journey as an author and then some of the things you talk about in the book. please do think about questions as we go along. So, Shailvi, just starting a little bit with your personal journey, right? As you look back, what would you consider as two or three moments that have really shaped your journey and motivated, inspired you to write about self-advocacy?
Yeah, first of all, thank you. Thank you, Shivam, for offering to lead this fireside chat. I would say that one of the moments that at least helped me want to talk about self-advocacy was that feeling of myself figuring out things that, we've all sat through careers where we've struggled with moments and then seem to arrive at an answer. So I spent a lot of my career moments struggling. Why am I not able to get a promotion? Why is someone else able to get a promotion? How do others get a raise so easily? And eventually I learned those things. And at some point, I just felt like I said, okay, I know I struggled with something and now I don't struggle with it. So what has that experience taught me that I can convert into something repeatable, something shareable, so that other people don't struggle the same way that I did? So I feel like that was the big motivation of even wanting to talk about this topic, because I knew that other people had that same topic on their mind. And writing about it was just, I think I spent 4 years just talking about the topic. And eventually I reached a point where I said, maybe there's a different format that's more consumable for people. And that's what inspired me to actually write this book.
It's amazing. And you're, of course, for folks who don't know, you're also a speaker, active speaker on data, and a bit of leader in data.
Yeah.
How do you think that has shaped how you think about self-advocacy?
Yeah, it's been very interesting because for me, I think there's a few pieces which, like the fact that I'm a data leader, it makes it even more likely that I think about this topic. One, because there's not a whole lot of people in data that look like me. I have led teams with my previous team, for example, at Strava, was more than 50% women. And for a lot of them, it was a huge deal that their head of department was a female leader. And I heard this sentiment from people all the time that when you don't see people who look like you in your careers, it just makes it that much harder for you to advocate for yourself, because you're a little more hesitant, you stick out a little bit, so you're a little bit more hesitant. You're not sure of the cultural nuance of what you can say, what you should say, and things like that. So I think in the data world, I'm super happy that there's a lot more people from underrepresented groups who are getting into that profession. But I felt like they're being taught Python and SQL and all of those skills, but there's this other set of skills that all of them seem to need and they seem to crave, but it's not really there. So I just considered that as part of that mission of, I want more people to be in data, and it's not just with their technical skills, it's also with other skills that they need to succeed in their job.
You yourself had to learn these skills the hard way. You start with a story about how you created a 75-page sort of deck about, and to really bring about some positive change in the team you were in.
Yeah.
But it also left you emotionally drained, which I think is an experience a lot of us have probably had. If you were to give your younger self some advice, one or two things to do differently, what would that be?
Yeah, that 72-page deck was quite fun times. It's interesting because for me, it was something that taught me, one, that I can do it. I did get a lot of outcomes that I wanted from that effort, but like I mentioned in my introduction, it left me emotionally drained, which was not a good outcome for me personally. That I was just it felt very intense, and I think the reason it felt intense was because I got into it with just this wish of, hey, something's going on which is not right, and I want to do something about it. And I have the capacity to do something about it. Lots of people don't have that. They can't make a noise for various reasons. And I had that luxury, so I almost felt it was an obligation. But I wasn't really structured about what exactly I was hoping to get out of it, rather than this sense of justice or this sense of this is the right thing to do. But I wasn't super clear, like what is my actual goal, and what is my, what am I okay with versus what's the best outcome, and then what is unacceptable to me. So I hadn't really spent enough time thinking about those pieces. And that's why every step of that process felt a little too emotional, a little too intense. That every time there's a new development, it's like, okay, what do I do with this? So my advice to to my younger self would be that be very clear about why you're doing something, and now I have that focus with me a lot more. Now I have a framework that I follow, and I kind of have those checkpoints built in, which make it easier. So I'm not just going and doing something and then seeing how it turns out. I'm actually being very disciplined about that whole process.
So, and I do want to get to that framework in a little bit, because I think one of the most powerful things about this book is how actionable it is. But before we get into that, right? You talk a lot about both sort of internal mindsets that hold people back and societal external norms that hold people back. Why do you think self-advocacy is so hard, and how do, before you do anything, how do you overcome those sort of mindsets and norms that are holding people back?
Yeah, those mindsets are actually, I often hear from people who say that they have a statement that hinders them, that's almost stuck inside their brain. Like they are, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's a colleague or a manager. Like they've heard someone repeat a statement which almost, it seems like that's the truth. And it might not be, right? Like you're so used to hearing that limiting belief that you don't question it. You just take it for what it is. And so that is actually the first step. Like whatever is in your head that is stopping you from going after what you want, from going after asking for your worth, write it down and stare at it and examine its validity. Like, is it true, or is it just something that you've heard so often that you take it to be true? So in my book, for example, I actually list out a couple of very common statements that I've heard people say. So I've mentored over like 350 people over the last few years, and so I've heard some themes again and again. And I encourage people to reframe that. That if somebody says this, like, what is another way of reframing that statement that is one, positive and actually helpful to you? And I think that that process can unlock a lot of other things that maybe you haven't heard but you think of in the moment. But it encourages you to sort of like just try something different.
So I guess as an immigrant, one of those statements for me personally would be this notion that if you just do your work, right, and keep your head down, everything else will take care of itself. And I think that's, a few of us often have that mindset. And this is one of the things you tackle directly in your book. Can you share more sort of how to overcome that particular mindset, and also what practical things that, or advice you would give to somebody who's sort of, hey, if I just do my job, everything else will just take care of itself?
Yeah, I actually love that one because it's a great myth to bust. Because one of the easy to understand downsides of the whole, like, just do your work and you'll get rewarded, is that people don't have time to know everything that you do. They don't have the understanding of everything that you do, and unless you articulate it to them, you may think they already understand, or maybe you think that they have the time to like comb through your, like, whatever it is, your work management Jira tickets, and comb through exactly what it is that you do, but they don't, right? I think those of us in the room who've been in leadership positions, we all know that managing our team or managing people's individual careers and things like that, like, that's half of our job. We have this other job that we have to worry about with the leadership of the team, of the company, and things like that. So managers don't always have the time to know what every single report of theirs is doing. And I talk about managers because they are typically the people who are in the best position to reward you. And so if you don't take that time to articulate to them so that they understand, because people are really great at, if something breaks, they notice it. If nothing breaks because you did a fantastic job, people don't notice that. So unless you tell them that, hey, the reason we don't have bugs in our code is because I am putting in extra hours to make sure that that happens, like, how will somebody know that? So I think just doing your work is not enough, unless you're 100% sure that the person who's in a position to reward you, one, is aware that you're doing that work and is also understanding the value of the work that you're providing. And I just don't like leaving it to chance. Like, it's much better that you just explain it to them so there's no guessing.
Now, I guess one of the ways or one of the concerns people often have is that might be perceived as self-marketing, self-promotion, right? And well, I guess two questions for you. One is, how is self-advocacy different? Because I think you frame it very differently. And the second is, how do you do it in a way that's authentic, right? And it just feels genuine to the person doing it.
Yeah, so I do, I do think that a part of self-advocacy, yes, it does mimic self-promotion because, like I said, you have to articulate what you're doing, what you're good at. And yeah, that is you promoting yourself. I think I would remove the negative connotation to it. There is nothing bad about you promoting something that is adding value to a business, to a team, to a community. That is good. Like, people like to see examples of success. It gives them inspiration. It gives them hope. People like to see examples of what has worked. There might be tons of people who are sitting and trying things and they're unable to get to the same outcomes. So you sharing what's worked for you is doing other people a favor. It is actually giving people that opportunity to learn, to collaborate, and to do those things. And I think that authentic voice piece is super important, and it's something that I personally struggled with a lot. Because I also have that voice in my head that says I don't want to sound like so and so, and I can't use the same words that somebody is. But one very tangible exercise that people can do is start looking around you for examples of people who are talking about something positive about themselves, but they're saying it in a way that that resonates with you. Because there are tons of people who are, self-promoting, but there are some whose maybe their choice of words or tone doesn't really strike you, but there are others who probably like you're celebrating with them, right? Like, we all have so many athletes who we celebrate, and there has to be something that resonates. And when people start actually practicing those words themselves, that they actually write down, like, okay, I did something cool. Now I'm actually going to write it down in my own words. And when you get comfortable hearing your own words, it becomes much easier to keep iterating to something that you can actually share with other people as well.
So just building on that, right? You do, I think, talks about how to build a very intentional plan about this. I guess how did you build that plan for yourself? And then also, for folks here, if you could encourage everybody to do one or two things on Monday, what would that be?
Yeah, so the plan, I guess, for anybody who's worked in technology, it really does mimic the product development process quite a lot. Like, that's where the fact that I'm a data leader also sort of shows up. I treat self-advocacy like a product that you can sort of improve. So I would say that, I have a lot more details in my book, but I would say if there's one thing that people can do differently on Monday, is that if you're not already doing it, block off half an hour a week at your work when you actually sit and write down everything that you did that week, which was valuable. And write down why it was valuable, write down why it is special that you did it and how you did it, and write down those details. And think about it with that mindset of eventually I'm going to use this when it comes time to ask for a promotion or ask for a raise. And like that alone, like, I think is such an unlock to people, because we almost feel like we know what we're doing, but we forget. Like, when you're in the moment, you don't realize how all these things are adding up. And then 3 months go by and you've had these massive wins along the way, but you treat it as just this one thing of like, yeah, I did my job. But that's not how you articulate it. And I also think it's a learning opportunity, because when people start tabulating their wins, their things that they're doing well, they also notice what they're not doing. And that can be an opportunity for you to remember that for me to be successful in my role, I have to do these 5 types of things. And honestly, all my examples are just from like these 3. And like these 2 things that I'm not doing, maybe I'm not doing it because I don't have the opportunity. maybe I'm not doing it because I am not seeking those opportunities. But regardless, it helps to actually write it down. And for those people who are already doing that, kudos to you. There are other examples of how you can look at where you are in the self-advocacy journey and actually pick a goal for that stage in the journey that is more appropriate.
I love that, right? And it's the whole notion of taking the pen on your own career growth. You talked about tabulating your wins, but one of my favorite parts in the book was also it's not just about your own wins, right? Self-advocacy is not just about the self. It creates better environments, more inclusive environments where your team, people around you feel more empowered. Would love one just if you could talk more about that, but also where you've seen that in action, right? Where it's really changed the entire environment.
Yeah, 100%. Someone did ask me, they said, why do you have a chapter in your book, which is like in a book titled Self-Advocacy, why is it about others? And I think the reason is that, one, I do believe that your happiness, your success can be based on the happiness and success of people that you care about. So if you have a community that matters to you, if you have a community who you want them to do well as well, their success feeds into yours. Like maybe you cannot be happy or satisfied in your work in isolation. Maybe you need your people, your community to be successful as well. It's also an important way that people give back, which demonstrably there's a lot of data in that actually improves satisfaction levels for people personally. But I would say that one example that I often bring up is I had a colleague at a time in one of my previous companies and it was a small company, but by the time I joined, it was not that small. But she mentioned that she'd been in the company for a lot longer, and she mentioned that she was the first woman in this company who needed maternity leave. Like that had apparently not happened before, so they did not have a policy for it. And so she's like, okay, well, now we have to have a policy for it. And she wasn't, of course she needed the leave, but she's like, we should have an actual, I don't want you to just tell me what's going to happen with me. I want you to actually create a policy that applies to any further women in this company who need a maternity leave. So I think that's fantastic, right? Because the company benefited from it too. When I was interviewing there, they touted, they're like, oh, and we have this amazing maternity leave policy. And, when I found out the background of how that had come about, so in her case, she was advocating for other mothers in the company, which, looking at it from her perspective, it benefited her too, because she wanted that support system as well, that there are other people in the company who need very similar things, and you want them to be successful too, because otherwise you're struggling yourself as well.
You have some actionable, you use two examples in the end of the book, one about promotion and then asking for a raise as well, which is fantastic, right? Because I think often people read and everything makes sense, but they're like, this is not for me, I can't actually do it.
Yeah.
So I did share some of that with a friend, and her immediate response for promotion was, oh, in the current environment, it's best to keep your head down, right? Just keep going. You shouldn't create too much noise, right? If you use that as an example, one, what advice would you give her, right? And how do you, I guess also, if we expand that more broadly, what advice would you give to people where they go through the book, this all makes sense, but I just can't do it? How do you actually get over that hump?
Yeah, the first piece of advice I would say is go talk to a friend who really cares about you and who does not want to undersell yourself. I have a friend like that sitting right there. Kinjan is a friend from college. I think I give an example in the book where I say, if you're having trouble, if you're saying something which is not that positive about you, find the voice of a friend who will never say anything mean about you. Who will never say oh, this old thing, that's not what they're going to say. So it's important to, one, just have trusted people who can, who are going to keep reminding you about your worth. But more tangibly to that example, yes, the economy is tough, but I think there's two pieces there. One, One is that people should do that actual assessment where they're not just assuming that it is hard for their company to give them a promotion or something like that, but they're actually doing the due diligence. Because what you don't want to happen is to see someone who has done less work, but they just asked and they received what you wanted, and then you're like, oh my god, if I had just asked, I might be in that same position. So I definitely want people to not shy away from doing something. Like there are ways of not just saying like, hey, give me a promotion, but actually going through like, what would it take for me to keep showing progression in my career. I think a statement like that is so powerful, because you are not asking somebody to give you a promotion. You are asking them to help you understand what it would take. And you know what? Maybe the answer you get is, you know what? It's not going to happen. Or like, it's going to be really tough. Like, budgets are tight. We're not going to do it. And that's fair. At least you have more information and you can decide what you do with that information. But the second piece, I think, is that titles are free. It doesn't cost company to give you a higher title. It doesn't cost a company to give you a larger scope, which is still helpful for your career, for you to be able to improve your skills, test out your skills in a new thing. So I think a promotion can be way beyond just budgets. So if the economy is bad, well, that's fine. What's something else that you can get out of the situation that is still helpful to you? If not for this job, then for the next job. And if you can't get a promotion in your current company, but there are other companies who are willing to hire you at that, whatever that outcome is that you seek, then you should consider it, and you shouldn't self talk your way out of that.
I love that, right? And I think that also the idea, if you never ask, you'll never know. So
Yeah.
the biggest risk is the risk you'll never take.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about career and the importance of self-advocacy in your career. You've also talked about advocating for your own health and happiness. Love to hear more about that, and also how you've done that in your own personal life.
Yeah, I care a lot about optimizing for happiness and health, because you can have the best career if you're unhappy. If you're unhealthy, then that's never great. So for me, what helps is to actually raise my awareness of what truly matters to me. Money, is it just I want to maximize it to as much I can get, or is it a threshold that I'm going after? Quality of life. So for me, I often talk about this example, but I hate commuting. I would take considerably less money if I do not have to commute. Like I can't do those 3 hours a day type of things. Like it really reduces the quality of my life a lot. And so I think knowing these things about yourself, and not just mimicking what you see other people do, what you see other friends do, like just take stock of what you care about. And I think that goes a really long way in making sure that you are aligning opportunities that you're seeking with what you actually care about and with what you actually value.
Moving away from the book itself and your journey as an author, what was the process like for you? What was the most challenging part? What are the highs and lows of, I think, last January, so about a year and 8-9 months?
Yeah, the process was interesting, because I think, like I said, I just talked a lot, and eventually I was like, okay, I'm gonna convert this to a written format. So for me, I started researching last Jan. I actually spoke to a publisher, and I was really like pumped about, like, I'm going to get a book out by the end of last year. So I totally failed that goal. I had a full-time job at that time, and with a full-time job, I wrote 3,000 words in a year. Not great. My book is 43,000 words. So the rest of the words I wrote in the 6 months after I quit my job. So, I mean, everybody has their own discipline. I'm sure there's people way more disciplined than me, but I really picked up on that goal this year when I did not have, when I wasn't working full time, and I said, okay, this is the time. This is my moment to just get this book out. I also felt a sense of urgency for some reason. I was like, I had a lot of people who had reached out to me and said like this topic is something they care about. This is, they were excited about learning more. So it was fun. The process, yeah, I would say that once I got down to it, I just had a structure that I wanted to write about. I had certain days, like Govind can definitely tell you more about the days when I'd be like, today, like, jokingly, I was like, do not give me food until I finish writing 2,000 words. I get hungry quick, so that never worked out. But at least I had that mental thing that, like, I have a goal that I'm setting and I'm going to try my best to stick to that goal. And that was how I was able to finish it.
What's been your favorite response or feedback you've received from a reader? And also maybe the most critical feedback you've gotten, if any?
I'm still waiting for my 1-star review because I will post that. Like, if somebody takes the time to post a 1-star review saying they hated the book, I'll almost take it as a compliment. I'm like, wow, you care so much. Just kidding. Do not give me a 1-star review. I would say the best reviews that I've got, like, I think people have been super kind. And I definitely had multiple reviews that sort of called out that this is a book that they really wish their younger self had read, because they've sort of found out the hard way how to get to where they are today. And like that just felt really meaningful to me because I felt that there's a specific sort of like I want people to care about building the skill in their teams, for themselves, for people they care about. But I want people to care about this topic because, as I mentioned earlier, like you can pick up technical skills at a lot of places, but college does not teach you how to negotiate a salary. College does not teach you how to ask for a promotion. Like they just tell you like, hey, show up on time and don't be bad at your job. But the actual gaining milestones is not something that's taught. So I feel like reviews that have called out that there are specific frameworks, there are specific skills that I can learn from this book is super nice. Critical feedback, like I would say that I am my biggest critic. So even when I read the book now, like, I had a point at which I'm like, I am not going to hit perfect. I'm not aiming for perfect. I'm aiming for good enough and like move forward. So I look at my book with a very critical lens. I know there's things that I can keep improving, but I also think the book provides value as is.
Yeah, and you talked about sort of this is not a skill that's taught. What's your recommendation or advice for readers to continue sort of learning, growing? What else after they've read your book, started to put some of this in action? How do you continue on this learning journey?
Yeah, I think that's very valuable because I think any muscle that you're trying to build, like if you don't practice that muscle, it eventually atrophies. So you sort of like lose that, you can lose that skill over time. People change industries, people change, they change companies, they change managers, and you're going to have to figure out with every new situation the different flavor of advocating for yourself that you don't already know. So that's why I think it's important for people to keep this skill current. And like I said, if all of your situations are great, you're not struggling with anything, help someone else. There's tons of things in the world that need advocacy, and if you either teach somebody else the skill to advocate for themselves, or if you help them in some way that shows them that, oh, actually, when I do this, I can get the outcome that I want. I think that's a smart way to keep your skills current. But if you run out, if everything in your life is perfect, you should try that.
Another book coming.
Ooh,
What will it be on? You wrote another book.
Actually, my next book is going to be a data book. I had a data course earlier this year, and because I was writing this book while I was doing the data course, and I was like, oh, this material looks enough for a book. But I would say on self-advocacy, I probably have like many subtopics on self-advocacy itself that I would love to sort of like deep dive on. So maybe I should double down on this and not get distracted with the data book that I want to write. I think, this is a topic that I do talk about in this book, but just how to help others with self-advocacy, especially for leaders. I think I have benefited, my previous team, even in the middle of the great resignation, had negligible attrition. And I really chalked it down to the fact that I encouraged people on my team to really advocate for themselves. And that was a thing that I normalized. So I really, I think that's a topic that can resonate with a lot of leaders of how to be proactive in setting up your teams where they actually highlight what they need and what there is. So maybe that will be my next book as a sequel to this one.
I will speak for the group. I'll be super excited and first want to read the book. Any parting thoughts before we open it up to the audience Q&A?
I'm just really, really grateful to see all the faces in this room. Some I know, some I don't know. So, and sorry, I was facing a lot more this side, so I apologize for this side of the room. But I'm just really grateful to anybody who's shown up. I know some people have shown up to just support me because they know me. Some people have shown up for the topic. Maybe some people are curious because this venue is beautiful, so that makes sense. But I really appreciate that you all kind of sat and heard the stuff. I would love to, hear, even if it's not questions, if you have stories of things in self-advocacy that worked, or if you have stories of things in self-advocacy that did not work, this is a safe space. I would highly encourage people to share it, because I really do think that how we all learn, speaking is a chosen format for some people, books is a chosen format. For a lot of other people, it's community. So I really hope everybody feels that there is a self-advocacy community that they can lean on if they want to explore more.
Questions? Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I'm probably going to just, let me just take awesome. Well, thank you, Shivam. That was some really thoughtful questions, and thank you very much for getting on. All right, so now it is time for us to take a couple of questions from the audience. So, does anybody have one? All right, I guess right here. Go ahead. Yeah, you can.
First of all, thank you for writing this book, because I think book is a form that will educate everyone at any time and make it accessible. Thank you for writing. My question is, if I look at this room, one thing that stands out to me is culture. Eastern culture is very much against being humble, to not brag about what you do, to not ask for what you do. Pretty much what you said, keep your heads down and things. But then Western culture is much more towards self-promotion and stuff. So from a cultural perspective, for someone who's very deep into, from their childhood or upbringing has been to not go and brag or stuff, how difficult would it be for them compared to someone who's from a different culture where it is okay to do that?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. I think that definitely resonates. I have a colleague from a previous company where we would actively discuss this in our Pan-Asians group that, hey, this is not normal for most of us to sort of talk about ourselves, to ask for things. And there is a little bit of fear associated with it. You can have situations where you feel it's more risky for you to sort of stick your neck out and say something. But I would say two things. One, the importance of self-advocacy should be really clear. We are not working in maybe our native cultures. We are working in a different culture where it is expected and it is encouraged. So I think that has to be super clear that we are in a different setting, and it's important to adapt. And I'm not saying this to say that back in your culture you don't need to do it, but I'm just saying definitely in this situation it is an expectation. And once you understand that importance, that it is something that is a requirement for you to succeed, then it's just a matter of figuring out how you can do it in a way that is comfortable for you. And I think everybody, if they just say that, here's where I'm starting, here's where I want to go, as long as I'm making progress and as long as I'm committed to making that progress, you can find a way to get from point A to point B in something that feels authentic, in a voice that feels that it resonates with you.
Let me add a question.
Yes.
Okay, so I know you for a long time, and self-advocacy, for me, coming from different places, not knowing English, and going to work where I work, I didn't think I was worth, right? I just gotta do the work, go home, and that's about it. Speaking up, and it took me a long time to have a self-worth, like, no, I can do this, I got this. What advice do you have people who has that? Because when you come from different country, English is not your first language, or and I have been through, I have a lot of coworkers the same boat, right? I usually try to motivate it, but I've been through it for many years, and then so I'm like, no, you got this. How do you tell them that it's okay? You can, if you say something, it's wrong, but that's okay. Just go ahead and, because I learned here, people are a lot forgiving. When you take too seriously on yourself, then they're gonna do the same thing. So how do you give them advice and, I don't know, just take it easy and, just go with it? Because for me, it comes with the experience, but
Yeah.
how do you sum it up in a nice kind of words?
Yeah, I would say that one, there's a lot of people who are still figuring stuff out, and they are doing big things. They're running for office. They are speaking. They're writing books. Like there's a lot of thought leadership happening, from myself included. Like I don't have all the answers, but you know what? I have some of them, and I know that those answers are valuable to some people. So as long as I keep moving forward, and as long as I keep finding ways to give value to people, that is, that is authentic, that actually helps them, I think that works really well. So I would say for anybody who's doubting their self-worth, like don't, don't doubt it, because if you were not valuable, you would not, nobody, like you're getting a paycheck because you are valuable. Your role exists because it adds direct benefit to the company. And I think that is really important for people to think about and just keep in the top of their mind.
What's your question?
Hi Shailvi, congratulations again. I am so looking forward to reading the book. I'm curious to get your thought on if you think there's such a thing as too much self-advocacy. And like thinking about the spectrum of like, when do you know that you're doing enough? Or how do you calibrate on like you need to do more, or just chill out and focus on the work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll answer that one by distinguishing between the two types of self-advocacy, which I call out in the book as well. There's the proactive kind, where you are anticipating that your active self-advocacy in a situation is just going to, it's more likely to result in outcomes that are beneficial for your career. And then there's sort of the reactive cases where something happens which is not going your way, and you have to figure out how to try to make it go your way. So I think the reactive one you don't have control over. If a situation like that happens, like as long as you are tackling things that happen which are out of your control head on, that's enough, right? Like if you're searching for the situations, maybe there's such a thing as too much. But I would say the proactive piece, if you are in general getting the outcomes that you care about, that's great, right? So we all have aspirations. We all, hopefully we are in our careers because we want something out of our careers. We want learning, we want progression, we want, to pay our bills. We have those things. So I think when people start noticing that they keep missing out on those things that they want from their career, they are under like self-advocating. They're not self-advocating enough, because those milestones can be optimized if you actually work towards it. And generally speaking, if you're happy, if you're moving forward, that's great. Like I still think that nobody has the luxury of saying like, okay, well, I've reached the top of my game and I can just chill. Like CEOs need to raise funds. They need to convince investors to invest in them. They need to hire people. So if I'm a CEO and I'm like, I'm done advocating for myself, I don't think people would want to work for me because I'll be like, oh, me? You want to work with me? No big deal. And that's not right? You want to make sure you position yourself well. So finding that balance is super important, and it pays off dividends because you're already practicing, and when you really need it, you already have those skills.
All right, there were a couple of questions submitted earlier. So one of them actually has less to do with self-advocacy and more about the writing of the book. I think there are some maybe aspiring authors in the audience. What are some things you would recommend to other first-time authors or people interested in becoming authors?
Yeah, so I answered the question about the years and how many words I got. So I'll add to that answer and say I encourage everyone to write a book. It's a painful process, but it is also super fun. So if you decide to do it, like you know where to find me. And I wish I had tried this because someone told me this later, and by that time I'd written most of my book. But they say it's a lot easier to talk your book out than it is to write it. So if you just want to dictate your book and have it transcribed, there's a bunch of AI apps that can do that for you. I think that would be super cool, and it's an easy way to get it out. I know there are other aspiring authors in the room who want to write their books too. But yeah, for me, like I mentioned during my chat earlier, 1.5 years is what I go with, even though the first year did not yield a whole lot. But the beginning of that year was when I said, I am going to start and I'm going to do this. And eventually I got somewhere reasonable.
Awesome. All right. I think we're going to do at least one more question. Can we get the mic here, please?
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a great talk. We really appreciate this. So my curiosity is around going from potentially from individual to maybe organizations. I mean, you do a lot of keynote speaking and all of that. So you probably know from organizations' perspective, it's in their interest that people they know their people, they understand what the individual is. From my own experience, I know we do any conversations once a year, twice a year, or maybe a few times. It's really, it doesn't do justice to maybe the way you were kind of giving one example. So from your conversational experience so far, do you see organizations are thinking about it differently? Because end of day, you can make a bigger impact if there is some of that top down as well, as much as it's about an individual making an effort.
Oh, 100%. I think that's a great question because I think there are so many companies. Like if you look at the companies that regularly show up in that top 10 best companies to work for list, I have worked in one of those companies. Like I used to work at Salesforce, and I can see why they land on that list. And I think in those companies you do see a lot more efforts of trying to really understand what an individual in the company is thinking and feeling. And that doesn't mean that like every day you're running 100 surveys for like how did today go, but you have those forums. So I think it's really powerful for companies that have employee resource groups that are aimed at people, who consider themselves as some sort of a community, because that is where a lot of these topics come up. That is where a lot of these shared struggles that an individual might feel, but you talk about them and you realize that there's a whole lot of other people who are feeling that too. So I think those forums, for example, are so powerful because it is much easier to advocate as a group of people sometimes than an individual. And there are different flavors of what you need to advocate for. If it's your promotion, it's your promotion. But if it's something that you need to do your job better, it helps that you have a bunch of people who resonate the same way. And I would also say that companies that are active about seeking feedback from their employees in a anonymity is fine. Like you're encouraging people to share their true thoughts. and you are not punishing somebody who actually speaks up and says something negative. Like, I think the best leaders are people who look at that as an opportunity. They don't look at it as, why is this person saying something critical? They look at it as like, thank God this person brought it up, because now I'm in a position to actually do something about it and actually get a different outcome. Like, I think those are the leaders who are going to succeed. Those are the companies that are going to succeed. And now there's a lot of tools on the market that allow companies to do this easier, but it depends on the company. Like, do they actually use the tools in the intended way and in a constructive way?
Awesome. All right. Thank you all. That was awesome. Thank you, Shailvi, for taking the time. And I think on that note, it's a good note to end. Please give yourself the psychological safety to tell yourself what you want, and also give people you manage and people you support and our peers with the psychological safety to voice what they want, so that you can support them, support yourself in your self-advocacy journey. So, great note to end on. All right, a couple of thank yous before we move on to the next part of the program here. I want to thank a few people before I share what's next. Firstly, this event and even this book was made possible by a lot of friends, family, and loved ones that chipped in. Thank you to Devika, Kinjal, Sambala, Par, Hitesh, Anumeha, and a whole lot of people, obviously Shivam as well, for your contributions. One of our friends flew all the way from San Diego for this. There are people who have flown from Tennessee to be here. So yeah, it's just awesome to have that support. I want to thank Manny's and Josh for managing this event and being amazing. This is a lovely space. This is a stage that has seen a lot of very, very cool contributing members of society, including politicians, actors, and all of that. So I think it's a privilege to be here and just a lovely space. And finally, to all of you for attending this event and making it a special memory for Shailvi and her loved ones. We're so grateful you chose to spend your Saturday afternoon here. Thank you so much. Please give yourselves a big round of applause. All right. We have a few things planned. Shailvi is going to be, selling her book and signing books back at that table as well. As mentioned earlier, you get a special promotional price for the book. That is not the price you'll see on Amazon. Please take some photos. We have some cool frames there. And you can be a little silly while also sharing with your community what self-advocacy is all about. So please tag Shailvi and let's keep this movement going. We also need to share raffle results. So that is the final topic before we all eat some cake. So hopefully everybody has put their name in. If not, maybe you do it now. I guess everybody's in. So the person who wins the raffle gets a signed copy of the book. I have some pink and yellow chits in here. Just going to select pink. All right, we have a winner, Subbu.
Oh, that's great.
All right. Subbu, could you start the book signing line, please, and get your first signed book? Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us.